This is Coaching Assignment 1 by Ethan Way. So first we have Pep Guardiola, who's the manager of Manchester City. One of the roles that he plays as the manager of the team is being an innovator. An innovator is someone that thinks outside the box and whose team progresses and improves due to being provided personalized coaching and has lots of motivation. An innovator brings new ideas such as strategies and coaching styles, which is good for a coach as they need to bring lots of new styles to the game so that they are unique and harder to play against as their tactics will be unknown. An example of Pep being an innovator is when his team sets up differently from a goal kick, whereas normally the teams are bunched up in a small area of the pitch to receive the ball from a long ball. Pep's players are spread all around the pitch, which means the other team doesn't know where the ball could go, and it also creates more one-on-one opportunities from the goal kick, which leads to more goals. As the manager of Man City, Pep Guardiola also takes on a lot of different responsibilities as a coach. One of these is having a professional conduct. So as a coach, you have a responsibility of representing the club or team as the way you act, so your behaviour and conduct will affect the players. And also, as is a big club of Manchester City, the media will also play a big factor as well. So teams will ask you about your professional calendar before employing you as well, and they will also expect like high standards of professional conduct when they do employ you. So this could be like your qualifications, if you're like if you look professional, you need to respect everyone at the club and also the officials, and be an effective communicator, and also reward the effort from the players around you. An example of Pep doing this would be when a press conference and one of the journalists asks him a question about something that might be personal to him. He could like react in a bad manner, and um, it will look bad on him and also the club. So he needs to make sure that he remains a professional behaviour at all times to ensure that the club and himself are in a positive mindset, which will also improve the performances of the team. And this is because they'll all be feeling a lot better. One of the many skills that Pep Guardiola requires as a manager or coach is communication. This is probably the most important skill required for a coach, as it helps the participants perform effectively. So using communication, you can exchange the information that the players need to know easily. So an example of this for him could be just telling them what to do in a session or how to do a drill, or also giving them advice on how to play better. So there's different types of communication, which are verbal, which is using speech to transfer over information to others. And there's also non-verbal communication, which could be hand signals, facial expressions, and body language. So communication is very important, because if a player doesn't know what they're doing or what their job is, or what maybe the overall aim of the session is, they won't possibly get the full effect of the drill or the session that's intended for them. An example of this would be, an example of this for Pep Guardiola doing this is if a drill is focused on getting into space and finding space on the pitch, which his Manchester City players does really well, then some players could not be aware of what the aim of the drill was, which was to get into space, and they won't be focused on doing that and trying to develop that skill, which means that they won't progress as well as the other players that are aware of it. So it's really important that Pep is able to make sure that everyone fully understands him, especially playing for a big club like Man City, where there's a lot of foreign players that speak different languages. So it's important that, he can speak different languages, which he does, and also that his body language and his expressions are also really effective. Next, we have Rob Baxter. So Rob Baxter is the manager of the Exeter Rugby team. As the manager, one of his roles would be to manage the team. So as a manager, someone who is responsible for controlling a group of players or possibly one player. Being the manager is key as a coach because they have the final say on what the plan is when the players go out to play. This could be things such as formations or tactics, etc. An example of Rob Baxter being a good manager would be him picking the players at the start of the start of the game day, sorry. Even if some players disagree with this, his decision should be final. As the manager of the SOT Rugby team, Rob Baxter would also have a responsibility of maintaining the health and safety. So all coaches have a duty of care, legal obligation, which is where this requires them to adhere to a standard of reasonable care while doing any acts that could possibly harm others. So all sports carry a risk of injury. So to help prevent this, coaches need to make sure that everything is done safely and properly. So this could just be making sure that the players are wearing the right equipment, such as shin pads in football, or making sure that the grass or whatever the playing surface that they're on is safe. So there are extrinsic factors and intrinsic factors. So the extrinsic factors is something that's outside the body, so this could cause an injury. So an example of this would be like an unsafe playing surface. And an intrinsic factor is a physical aspect of the body that could cause injury. So this could be overusing your body during the sport, which could cause a lot of wear and tear on the joints and the muscles, which could easily cause an injury. So an example of this from Rob Baxter would be making sure that when they're training, the surface that they're playing on is suitable to training. So if the ground's really hard because it's been cold outside and frosty, whenever they could make a tackle, they could land heavily on the ground, which could be hard, which could easily cause an injury for one of the players, which would be bad for, well, the player because they'll be injured, and also Rob Baxter because he'll be a player down. So Rob would have to make the executive decision to um to say whether or not it's safe to play on. As the coach of the rugby team, Rob also would use a lot of skills. One of these is organisation. This is a very key skill for him to have, as he'll plan a lot of sessions with the coaches and staff, and also have such a big facility to work with, a very large squad number as well. Um, so there's a lot to organise. So such as stuff like participant numbers, appropriateness of activities, the equipment of the facilities before and the after, and the starters and the plenaries. So this is important because if the sessions are unorganised and there's no structure to them, then nobody really knows what's going on. But they'll just they could wing it, which means the session's not going to go very well because nobody will know what's going on. An example of this would be if Rob Baxter didn't plan the session, then he wouldn't know how many people are turning up or what equipment he needs and what facilities he's going to require. So they won't get much done in the session because they'll be trying to plan it as they go, and they won't be going straight from one thing to another. So they'll still be trying to figure out what they do. So as Rob Baxter is a good head coach of the rugby team, he plans ahead for his sessions and makes sure that everything's organised and everybody knows exactly what's going on. Next we have Joe Mills, who's the coach of the team BTC basketball. So as the coach, one of the roles he would take on is being a role model to the team. A role model is a person that's looked up to others, so they have to be a good example of how to act or behave. This is especially used by children as they'll look as their coach. They look towards their coach as a role model. Um, so in many situations during a game or training, this could possibly be at home as well. A good coach will be able to influence the players in several different ways, such as socially, personally, psychologically, and also help develop their health. So, example of this would be if one of the players was getting into a fight, they'd think about what their role model would do, which could be Joe Mills in this case, um, and they wouldn't get into the fight and just sort of leave it alone instead, because if they didn't sort of think about what their role model would do, or Joe Mills would do, they could just end up throwing punches, which would get them suspended or even worse. So as the coach of the basketball team, Joe has responsibility of legal obligations within the team. So this starts with the disclosure of barring services, which is also known as a DBS. So the DBS checks a coach's previous convictions or the teacher's or coach's previous convictions, such as like sexual offences and violent criminal records. So all coaches must be aware and adhere to the Children Act, which was made in 2004, and they must all be aware of the signs and symptoms of child abuse. So there's lots of different types of child abuse, such as physical abuse, sexual abuse, um, emotional abuse, and neglect. So if a coach notices any of these symptoms or any signs of these types of abuse, then they should react calmly and avoid frightening the child, unless you definitely need to definitely you should make sure the child's safe, and should keep questions to a minimum so that they don't think about it too much. You should also definitely make a record of it, and shouldn't promise confidentiality, as you may need to inform someone at a time to make sure that their child is safe. And also you should report the findings to either the boss or someone who can help the kid out. So an example of this with Joe Mills would be if someone turns up to training and they look bruised, so this could be either bruises on their arms or their wrists or around the neck and the face area. This could show signs of physical abuse from either a parent or carer, or it could be they got into a fight. Then they should report this to the appropriate person, and just also reassure the child and ask a few questions without making it too obvious that they're digging into it, and try and understand how they got the bruises or who put them there to ensure the overall safety of the child. So a skill that Joe Mills would require as being the Team BTC basketball coach would be analysing. This is the key skill, as it will contribute massively to the team's performance improvement. So the coach will be analysing the team and possibly themselves. The coach must have a good ability in order to observe and analyse, because if they don't understand the game or don't understand how to win or what's good for performance, then they won't be able to give constructive advice to the players to help them improve. So to help performance and improvement, a team coach must have a clear idea about what they want the team to do and how they want them to perform. So this would help them clearly be able to observe and pick out any faults in the team that they might have to work on in training and eliminate them. The coach could also analyze personality in the team and motivation, or possibly other psychological aspects that could affect the performance. So an example of this could be if Joe Mills' team's losing, a lot of players could have their heads down and reduce their work rate, which will much decrease their performance, and they'll just lose by even more because they will be playing as well, which will be something that Joe would want to improve on. And if he didn't really know much about psychology in sport, then he'll get a sports psychologist to come in and talk to the boys or the girls, and they'll talk to them about their mindset and how they can improve what they want to do in those situations where they're losing, which will also, well, in the end, it will get the team to play better when they're in those specific scenarios. So next we have Helen Weller, who's the coach of the Team BTC trampolining. So one of the roles that she would take on is to be a teacher, educator, or instructor. So this part is the transfer of learning to the players or the pupils, as a coach would need to teach emotional and social skills, which will help the overall well-being of the athlete's mentality. So to be a good coach, you should also know that many different students or players learn in different ways. So for example, a lot of people learn by actually doing things and being interactive, whereas some people learn by looking at things and watching things. An example of this from Helen Weller would be teaching the athletes the scoring systems about trampolining. So if they were just starting out the sport and they didn't know much about it, then they would have to be taught the scoring systems and the rules, which could be hard for some kids as they may not take it in as well as others, depending on how you're teaching it. So Helen would have to make sure that she's gone through it loads of different ways to make sure that every child fully understands it personally. So it's just that she's able to adapt and do it in different ways. So for Helen Weller, the knowledge of the coach environment is very important because trampoline is such a technically advanced sport. It can also be very dangerous if not done properly. So the knowledge of the coaching environment is very key. So this involves stuff like the training facilities, the equipment that's needed, uh, the location of the essentials such as the toilets and first aid, and also the fire exits and showers. So an example of this for Helen would be if someone's landed awkwardly on the trampoline and fell off the trampoline, and the spot hasn't done their job, and the athlete breaks their leg, then the coach and the other athletes will definitely need to know where the first aid kit is and also where to go to phone for an ambulance so that they can get them to a hospital as quickly as possible. Whereas if nobody knows like where the first aid kit is and where to go to phone for an ambulance, uh, then this could like take considerably longer, which could possibly cause more damage to the leg if it's not treated quickly. So next we have the techniques of a coach. So we have fitness tests or fitness assessments. So this is where an examination is basically taking place, which assesses someone's physical fitness and health, especially to determine their ability to perform in a sporting fixture. So this could be after an injury, possible illness, or if the athlete just wants to improve their fitness or improve on whatever sport they're playing. So fitness tests can be extremely helpful when trying to identify weak areas for your game. Such this is because like you can test almost every aspect of the sport when you're playing, which makes it really easy to pinpoint areas for improvement, which you can then like go on and work on individually to help your performance. So goal setting is a very important motivator in sports performance. So setting goals can give individual players and team sports targets and stats to drive for it. So it can also be used as a measuring stick to help monitor the progress and improvement. It goes like it should basically be like agreed between the coach and the player and should be like revisited often to check up on the progression. So many teams and individuals follow the SMART goal setting model. So this model suggests that goals should be specific, measurable, action orientated, realistic, timed, and self-determined. This is because you need to be specific to your sport, otherwise it won't help you improve and it won't give you anything to aim for, as it'll be like pointless for your sport. So they need to be measurable as well, so that you can monitor your progress easily, which will help you motivate yourself to keep on striving towards the goal. Also, having realistic and timed goals is important because it will give you a deadline to reach for, and when you achieve it, it will make it feel like you'll make it feel like a great accomplishment, which will which will make you want to set more goals and then follow on and keep improving your performance. An effective demonstration is used to show how a drill or activity is done. So this is effective because the players will know what is expected of them and will also help them understand the reasoning for doing the activity. The demonstrations can be shown physically, so if you're on the football pitch and you're about to do a shooting drill, then you show the players a good demonstration on how the drill should be done, so that when they come to do it, they know exactly what to do. This can also be shown in a video in certain situations, so this might be like when you're not able to physically do it, because you could be in a classroom doing like a psychology session and might not have enough space to do it. So showing a video will help people who visually learn better understand it as well, so that they can still see the technique of how to do stuff and what the motion that they need to do is. So the most important role at the elite level is to be an innovator. This is because at the elite level, the stakes and rewards are much higher, so you need to have a coach who can innovate and come up with ideas that no other team has thought of. Yeah, so that you can get as many advantages as possible. Also, at the elite level, your opponents will be researching your team and watch videos about your team, trying to pick out uh, different parts of the team or individuals that they can exploit. So thinking outside the box and being creative will help your team or the individual to win. Uh, this is not as important at the non-elite level because at that stage it's all about getting players and young kids into the sport and keeping them interested. It's also about developing the key and basic skills in the sport. So if a manager was quite innovative and trying to suggest new styles and techniques which are quite complicated to the kids, then they'll get easily confused as they're not going to understand it and they'll find it hard, which will just sort of like drive them out of the sport as they're not going to stay interested because they're not having very much fun. Uh, the most important role at a non-elite level is to like be a role model. So this is because if the children don't know what to do or don't know how to do something when they're sort of like on the pitch or training, then they'll look up towards the coach for advice and guidance on how to deal with the situation and what to do. So if the coach is like turning to training on time and working hard, plays fairly and like promotes like fair play, then the young players will follow the examples of the coaches and become better like socially, psychologically, and also their performances will improve. So this is not important at the elite level because players have already gone through the grassroots level and the participation level, and they're playing professionally where a role model is not needed so much as they're becoming a role model themselves. So where they're playing for a big club, a lot of the younger children will be looking up to them and seeing what type of styles that they play and the ethics and the work rates that they follow. So they'll like sort of follow on from them and play like that in games. So a role model for an elite player is less required because they've actually already gone through the stage and of like looking up for a role model and they're becoming one themselves. So the responsibilities, the most important responsibility of a coach at the elite level is professional conduct. So this is because uh, you're watched and like sort of scrutinized by so many more people at the elite level. So there's nowhere to hide and everything's sort of seen by fans or other staff and especially the media. So the reason it's so important is because if you're like being seen misbehaving or disrespecting someone, like the referee or something like that, then you'll be scrutinized a lot by media because they can twist stuff and then make it out to be worse than it is and make it look bad on you, and also it'll look bad on the club and the players. So you need to make sure that professional conduct is good at all times. So professional conduct isn't required so much at the non-elite level because if you show up the training like not necessarily in the right kit or don't have the right the right qualifications or possibly don't even have much knowledge or experience, and it won't affect the children too much because the players aren't there to judge the coaches. However, in some cases it could be important because you need to like promote fair play and reward effort for the players and motivate them. So like you need to also respect all of the abilities, as some players can be better than others. However, they're still not as important as at the elite stage because you won't get scrutinized for it as much, and it won't be as big of a deal as if you were doing all of those things badly at the elite level. So the non-elite, the most important responsibility of the non-elite is um, the knowledge of the coaching environment. This is because at the lower grassroots level, it is important as there'll only be like one or two coaches that run the whole session. So um, they'll have to like set up the session on their own, do all the drills, collect the fees, and pack away the session at the end. Um, so they basically need to know where everything is kept. this would be such as like the toilets or the footballs or the goals, any equipment that's needed for the session. So they'll be doing it all themselves without any help. So this is less important at the elite level because uh, there'll be lots of coaching staff which will contribute and help with the session. So it's only really like they don't need to really worry about what other people are doing, only themselves. So an example of this would be a goalkeeping coach would only need to worry about what equipment they need for their session. Um, so some other players might go off and do a shooting drill as well, in which the coach that's running that will only need to do only need to worry about what session they're doing or what drills they're doing and what equipment they'll need for that. So there's like so many more coaches that all the jobs are split up into. So lots of different people and not as important at the elite level as it's a lot easier for them. So next we have the skills. So the most important skill at the elite level is analyzing. So this is most important because the clubs are definitely like their overall goal is to win games and they're rewarded on winning games and strive to win games. So they always need to be improving and looking for ways to get better. So analyzing is a massive part of their game because this is how coaches and analysts will discuss with the teams or individuals to find ways for them to improve. However, this is a lot less important at the non-elite level because at that stage it's all about having fun and taking part rather than giving like kids lots of things to work on. They'll just sort of think they aren't very good rather than thinking of it as like constructive criticism in a way. So it will just like sort of demotivate them, which will make them play badly because they don't really want to be there. And if they're losing every game, then they're not going to want to play, are they? So they'll just sort of leave the sport, whereas it's all about motivating them and keeping the enjoyment levels up. So the most important skill at the non-elite level is problem solving. So this is because uh, there'll only be a low number of coaches running the session, therefore between them they need to be able to plan sessions dependent on like different things and situations that come up on them. Um, so with non-elite level, things aren't like certain to happen, so many different problems can occur. So basically, these could be like numbers aren't turning up to training, not being able to get hold of equipment or facilities, and also transport can become a problem. So therefore, the coaches need to be able to like sort of think on the spot and deal with those situations as they come at them. So an example of this could be like if they've planned a session for 12 people and only 7 turn up, then they have to think of different drills that they can do that will still be effective for them. So it's a lot less important at the elite level because there's basically a lot of things, well, a lot of the problems that they could come up in the non-elite aren't going to come up in the elite level. So um, not many surprises or unexpected problems are going to happen. So like they'll know how many people are going to turn up to training. You're going to be guaranteed the facilities and the transport, and the opponents are already going to be sorted and everything because it's not managed. It's not like all done by you as a coach. So it's less important for the elite coaches as they don't have to worry about uh, most of these problems, and they're not like involved with planning a lot of the things. So, however, they'll still have to be good at problem solving. So, like if a player gets injured during a game, they'll have to work out which player will be best to replace them. However, a lot of the scenarios aren't going to come up, so they'll have to like use their problem solving skills in different ways compared to the non-elite. Therefore, I think this makes it less important. So lastly, we have the techniques. So a positive for our fitness test is that um, they're really helpful for finding like weak areas of your game and like knowing like helping you find out exactly what you need to improve on. So this is a positive for performance because you're able to train the weak areas like shown by the fitness test And they're also good as you can keep on like revisiting them and showing like how you've been improved and like the progression that you've made. However, a negative fitness test is that some of the fitness tests like that aren't really specific to the sport that you're playing in a way. So an example of this could be like even though some of them are like specific in like different ways, sometimes they can't be. So an example of this would be like a vertical jump. If you're doing it like a vertical jump test and you're a footballer, then the vertical jump would be like from a static position and doing a header, which could possibly make the results worse because you aren't doing it from a static position because you wouldn't do that in football very often. So um, which it'll basically like make your score lower as you're not like used to doing that very often, even though it's still a good test of your like explosive power. It's not fully specific to a game, so you might have to adapt it in some way to make it more like accurate. So you could do it from a running jump, or to make it more accurate to scoring a header, and instead of reaching your arm up, you could see how high your head can reach. So that would make it more accurate and reliable. So our technique number 2 is goal setting. So a positive of goal setting is that is a great like motivator for people like who's just starting out training or going to the gym. So having something to aim for is really good because it will give you a sense of direction and you know exactly what you want to achieve and how to do it, which will make it so much easier for you to like push on and achieve the goal. However, a negative for goal setting is that some people who don't set goals often or haven't done it before could set an unrealistic goal and overestimate themselves. So therefore, when it comes to achieving the goal, they'll find it really hard and they'll have to like reduce the challenge for themselves. And also, if they don't um like if they don't achieve the goal that they've set, then they'll become very demotivated and won't really see the point in training anymore. So they could just stop, which wouldn't be good. And then our last technique is an effective demonstration. So the advantage of an effective demonstration is that when people learn from the demonstration, they can easily pick up the actions and movements, which might not be available from like just being told verbally. Also, the athletes are able to like look at the techniques and use the techniques that have been shown to them, which is especially effective when the person doing the demonstration does the technique well and correctly. So when the athlete puts them into practice, they know that they're going to improve. A negative about the demonstration uh, is that it could be made overcomplicated, which will then confuse some people, especially when coaching children. A demonstration is most likely to be effective when it's very simple. Also, if the coach isn't qualified in the sport, they might be teaching the wrong technique, which is most likely to happen in like non-elite. Um, well, if they teach the wrong technique, that means that their performance won't really improve because they're not doing it right. Um, because the movements aren't right, and also the technique will be bad, which could cause an injury to the players, which you don't want. Thank you for listening.